All right, my goal for this step is to knock as much of the paint off as I can using 60 grit sandpaper. And when I'm done, I can always come back with some paint stripper if I need to get into some of the crevices. Using the sandpaper right now will allow me to tackle some of the rust that presents throughout the body of this base, and maybe one less step on the back end of the paint removal. The kitty entering the bottom right corner of the screen there is Misty, aka Scruncher, and she was a good friend of mine for about 18 years till I lost her in March. In fact, this video is being edited about 2 years after it was shot, and I didn't even realize she was in there. But as you can see, shop vac, sander, it didn't matter what I was doing. She just wanted to be near me. Most cats would hightail it out of there, but that's how she lived her life. Gonna miss you, Scrunch. All right, I think that worked pretty well. So let me make my way around the rest of the base, on the outside at least, and see how that goes. I'll do that off camera. I've got the outside completely rough sanded. As you can see, I've got some detail areas to come back and deal with. But what I'm gonna do is focus my attention on the inside here, and then I'll come back and do the details on the outside and the inside. Got it. It actually goes pretty quick. That didn't take me too long to do. What takes the longest time is the detail areas, the crevices and corners, and that's why I'm going through and doing a whole rough sand first before I come back and tackle any of these little corners. Something to keep in mind while you're sanding the base, whether you're on the inside or the outside, is you've got to be careful of these little spot welds and even the studs. You don't want to hit those with sandpaper or a grinder. They're all throughout the machine, so you really got to be careful. Stay away from those. Otherwise, if you sand those down too much or grind them, you're going to weaken that weld and then potentially just pop the metal off. All right, everybody, I've done quite a bit of sanding at this point on the outside and the inside of the base. So now I'm going to take a break from the sanding, and I'm going to go ahead and apply the paint stripper in these areas. I've got all the nooks and crannies coated with the paint stripper, and on the inside, if you can see that, I took strips of cellophane or plastic wrap, and I just layered those over all the different long areas or nooks and crannies, just to hopefully keep that stripper from evaporating. For this step, I've got a couple brushes here, some warm soapy water, and a wet dry vac. I'm going to go ahead and wipe out what I can and then spray and agitate what's remaining while I'm actually trying to extract that. I'm about halfway through now, and I would say the extraction with the warm soapy water is actually working. There's just no way to get around it using paint stripper, especially with all these little edges and everything. Is just a messy ordeal. So really tried to get into the crevices here with a wire brush while I was spraying and extracting. I got most of the paint and everything and the gunk out of here that I was looking to get off. But the main purpose of that step too was to have a really good sense of the rust underneath the paint. That really shows up great now, and so I can take this to the next level and really get a detail sand and prep here. Before I do too much more of the detail sanding, I wanted to try the vinegar idea, and so I've got that saturated with paper towels and then covered with plastic wrap and taped. And what I'm trying to do is make those corners progressed a little bit farther before I get back in there to try to sand those down. So I definitely don't want to leave this overnight like I was intending. Probably just need to get it off here, but let's see what it looks like. All right, that is definitely corroded. Let's see if it comes off there a little bit. I'm going to see if this will loosen up with a wire brush and some soapy water. I've got most of the vinegar extracted, so I went in after I took the plastic off and just kept hitting it with a wire brush and wiping it down, wire brush, wiping it down. Once I got through the bulk of it, then I began to rinse it. Of course, just rinsed it with warm soapy water initially for a little bit, just agitating along the way. And then once that was done, just sprinkled baking soda along all the areas that would have had the vinegar just to neutralize any little residue that was on there. Let that sit for a few minutes, rubbed it in, and then of course wiped the baking soda out, and then did another just clean water rinse, dried all that, dried it quickly too so it wouldn't like flash rust again, and then came back and just hit it with Windex, the whole thing. So I would say that is a pretty good result just for what I was trying to accomplish here. And just for comparison, this is the top side, the other two corners that I still need to do. That's a huge difference between those two areas. So that's untreated, and then of course that's the one I just finished. So I would say that's a great result, and I'm gonna head into the next step and I'll bring you back. We'll see where we're at. So I came in here on this next step with the wire end brush here and really got into the corners. On this side, I haven't done that yet, and as you can see, it's quite a bit rougher and it's got more rust in there. So I think the goal for this is just to get the rust out of those pits. I'm not going to be able to really smooth them out. I'm going to do this off camera, so let me take care of that and I'll bring you back when I'm done with that step. I would say I'm about 90% done with the inside here. Gone through all the corners, all the surfaces as much as I could get. The last little bits are just the detail around the edges, the openings there, and then of course the base. So I'm going to come back to that. It's just been a lot of work, and it's difficult to lean in there and get the surface prepped the way it needs to be. All right, you can see that's quite a bit of work, and even after all that, I still need to come back and really try to get into these crevices here, but that at least gets me the overarching rust and gets the big picture taken care of, like the macro rust, and then of course, as I've said throughout the project, I'll end up having to come back and just spend time on the details. So I'm gonna keep working that all the way around. I want to bring you guys close in to these corners. I still wasn't able to get any of that with the sanding, so I have been working for quite some time now to just get a abrasive media system in place. And so this is what I have, just a little Harbor Freight blaster, and I'm using abrasive slag number 4080, which is pretty fine. And here's my compressor setup. So I've got a brand new hose, I've got a separator connected there. This is kind of like acting as a condensation line, although I do know it should probably be much longer for this application, but I'm hoping it'll work. So that's after one little round of this, and I think it's working pretty well. All right, well, that was interesting. The setup did work, so everything looks pretty good from what it was. I mean, there was a significant amount of rust all the way around, but yeah, I'm happy with that. All right, here it is. Been a long time coming to get to this point. I've got the yeah, DIY paint booth set up. This is just a standard canopy, 5x5 with some Dollar Tree shower curtain liners. And then on the inside of the canopy up here had Velcro. So it was the loop side of the Velcro. So I just bought a 30-foot roll of hook and loop strip. And so I put the loop here on the top of the shower curtain. And then at each corner, I put another strip so that these would overlap each other and seal there. And then at the corners here, just some magnets to keep it secure while I'm painting. And then this is gonna be pretty loose, so I can just come in and out here. Of course, the shower curtain liner has a magnet at the bottom. But here's the base. I've gone over this a million times. Just getting it prepped the best I can. So it's ready. Here's my little tester panel. And yeah, I'm about to get ready to spray. First time ever. Here we go. Well, I had this thing pretty much where I wanted it on that third coat. It was about 95% right where I wanted it, but I had some nibs and a little sand piling that I wanted to knock down. So I did that, and I was just gonna put on another final coat, nice little wet coat, nice and smooth and flowing. But wouldn't you know, forgot to adjust my sprayer settings. So I came back a couple hours later, had runs everywhere. And it was just too much to even salvage. And this is enamel, so I can't sand it. So after about a year, I'm right back to kind of square one. Gonna have to strip this all the way down and redo it. With the power of editing, it's about a year later. Now, I didn't just paint this. I actually did finish it last summer, but I let it cure for a couple months and then I wrapped it and just kind of set it aside while I was working on some other parts. One drawback with the Alkyd enamel I used is it was really soft, so you can see the blemishes there from just the plastic wrap. Not a big deal. The color's still intact. I think overall this came out pretty good. I'll get into it a little bit later on in the video towards the end. I had to use a different paint on some other parts, and had I known better about this Alkyd paint, I might have went with the other stuff. You'll see that in a little bit, but overall, I'm satisfied with this result. So first time ever using a paint sprayer, first time ever doing a table saw project. So, what more can you ask for? The inside, I actually did that by hand with a brush. With my paint sprayer setup, there really wasn't any way for me to do that confidently. I didn't think so. Brushed on the inside, sprayed on the outside. Overall, looks pretty good though. Here I'm applying Minwax Clear Aerosol Lacquer, and that was recommended to me by Terry Benko over at Benko Vintage Machine Works here on YouTube. And what I like about this is it struck a good balance between preserving the cast iron underneath the table here, while also kind of leaving that natural black cast iron look. And then also prevented me from having to paint this, because if I ever needed to take this paint off again, it would be a nightmare like it was the first time. So I think this is a great suggestion, and thanks, Terry, for all that. All right, everybody, I've got all the parts sandblasted, taped off, and ready for paint here in my DIY paint booth, hanging up with some tie wire and a little bit of fence wire. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, well, I'm glad you had asked that. What did go wrong is that I used a water-based primer on these cast iron parts, and within about 10 minutes, every single one of them flash rusted. So I scrambled around a bit, try to figure out what to do, and I settled on a Rust-Oleum hammer texture paint, which is an outdoor paint that you can use on bare rusty metal. And that was a recommendation by a local painter in my area, and I actually think it came out pretty nice. Super durable, and I might have used that from the beginning had I known better. And also I was able to spray it on using my sprayer setup, so that worked out. As far as the plates that attach to the outside of the base, I did stick with the same enamel that I used on the base just for consistency. But overall, despite that little hiccup mistake there, I think everything came out pretty nice. And definitely ready to move on to the assembly of this table saw and get it back to work soon. So that's next up. I appreciate you waiting this long for this. It's been a while, and hopefully we'll get on to the next one pretty soon. Thanks for sticking around, and see you on the next one.